to better convey what we do in a school setting. It is in draft mode, a work in progress, but here's a summary of some of the teaching that we do on a daily basis. We provide direct instruction using research-based curriculum for students to make progress towards their IEP goals that are written towards state standards. We prepare and implement evidence-based lesson plans that are individualized to each student's needs, and we write progress reports on those goals. Our daily direct instruction with students occurs in a variety of group sizes and can take place in multiple settings, such as a separate room, in collaborative spaces, in classrooms with integrated therapy, teaching in the classroom and co-teaching with a teacher. SLPs are teaching all day long. Locally and nationally, there is a shortage of SLPs. The Fargo Public Schools has an exceptional challenge to fill openings in this competitive market in this region. In addition to competition from neighboring school districts, we also have a large number of private practice clinics, hospitals, early intervention programs, and long-term care facilities that are also advertising openings for SLPs. When recruiting SLPs, a huge appeal of what sets us apart here at Fargo Public Schools are the benefits that are tied to being on the teacher contract, including a set of set hours, defined duties, our 190-day contract, TFFR, our leave days, defined salary with the matrix and steps, and lane changes. We ask for the same security as our teaching partners with a negotiated contract to continue or to table this for now so Dr. McCanna and his team can review updated job descriptions to get a more accurate picture of how these positions impact students. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have Dr. Jonas.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for this time here with the board. I would just like to once again celebrate CTE Month, which happens every year nationally in February and across the state of North Dakota. And I think I'm just really excited that the theme this year is igniting potential and inspiring excellence. And this is my 11th year in Fargo Public Schools, and I am just grateful for what you have done over the years to help really invest in career and technical education. You've supported our teachers in the classroom, equipment, supplies, resources, and because of that, our students have had a plethora of activities and courses and pathways to choose from, many times helping them, igniting their inspiration, inspiring them to learn more. And sometimes they find out, you know, that just really wasn't for me, but that too has a benefit and a value because those students can explore something different and something more, hoping to find their passion before they graduate. It has also helped them think about college and career. Your investment in the Choice Ready project and program manager has really helped increase our graduates in Choice Ready, and our Work Ready is at 90%, which is really exciting from across the state. That too helps our students become scholarship ready. And so I'm very grateful for the work that you've done as a board to help us in career and technical education and acknowledge the importance it has on our system and our students from elementary to high school. Our counselors, I want to thank our counselors and career advisors for the lessons they teach starting at elementary into middle school and high school that turn into pathway conversations, work-based learning experiences, college preview visits, and job shadows. Just so many things happen in the guidance of our students with their four-year rolling plans. I really am excited to just say thank you to our CTE educators and the leadership team that I'm able to work with, Lana, Idette, Ryan, Heather, Mr. Dolan. I can't help but always just call him Mr. Dolan. It's so important to have people to help support our educators and counselors out in the field. Finally, a huge thanks to Dr. Gandhi for the work you've done as superintendent, and I wish you well as you move on to your next transition. We'll probably want to partner with you in career and technical education. And then to the teaching and learning team that's just been a part of helping me think through ideas, challenge my thinking, help me improve my ideas and results. Dr. Gross isn't here tonight. Dr. Hansen, Missy, Shelby, Patty, Stephen. It's just a great group to work with. And finally, I just want to say thank you to the board. I know your job is not easy, and I know you have lots to think about. So thanks for thinking about career and technical education. Thank you, Jason, Nikki, and Robin, for also helping with Cass County Governance Board work. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Denise. Next on our list, we have Adrian Eider.
Good evening, school board members. You may remember me. My name is Adrian Eider. I reside in the Fargo Davies area and am a proud school counselor at Fargo South High School. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you again tonight and want to take a moment to thank you for your time and willingness to listen. We are grateful for your attention to the concerns surrounding the proposed removal of school counselors and other educators from the negotiated teacher agreement. Whether you read our emails, spoke with us over the phone, or heard from our friends, colleagues, and family members, your engagement has not gone unnoticed. School counselors are teachers. We provide direct instruction, assess student progress, and collaborate with other educators daily to create a safe, supportive learning environment. Like other educators, we follow a structured curriculum, deliver lessons that align with district and state standards, and play a critical role in student learning and development. We hold teaching licenses through the North Dakota Education Standards and Practices Board, and many of us began our careers in traditional classrooms before pursuing additional education to become school counselors. Our offices are our classrooms, but much of our work also happens inside traditional classrooms. A significant portion of our time is spent delivering lessons, whether one-on-one, in small groups, or to entire classes, focused on academic planning, social-emotional development, and college and career readiness. These lessons aren't just supplemental. They are aligned with the ASCA mindsets and behaviors for student success, a research-based framework that helps students develop the skills they need to thrive in school and beyond. This year, school staff were presented with a plan to provide students with feedback on respect, responsibility, and preparedness, core skills outlined in the district's guidelines for success. Developed through the PBIS process to foster a positive school culture, these guidelines also work in tandem with the ASCA mindsets and behaviors to support students' overall development. Posters in every classroom display rubrics for these expectations. But who is responsible for explicitly teaching them? Whose curriculum do these success standards fall under? While traditional classroom teachers reinforce these skills through their content areas, school counselors are the only educators dedicated to directly teaching and guiding students in these essential areas. The ASCA mindsets and behaviors emphasize these social, emotional, and academic skills as critical to student success, and as licensed educators, we help to ensure that students develop them in meaningful ways. Reclassifying school counselors sends a message that our work is separate from teaching, when in reality, it is deeply embedded in the educational experience of every student. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. Our next speaker is Misty Miller.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Misty Miller, and I live in the Fargo district, and I am the instructional coach at Centennial Elementary. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I am here representing the 17 elementary instructional coaches in our district. I come before you not just as an instructional coach, but as an educator, a teacher at heart, in practice and in purpose. Similar to the other groups informed on January 17th about their removal from the teacher contract, we too play a vital role in teaching and learning process within our schools. We do not simply support teachers, we are teachers, and our work is directly tied to student achievement. Each day we collaborate with educators to strengthen instructional practices, analyze student data to inform teaching, and ensure that every student has access to high-quality, research-based instruction. We work in classrooms, model lessons, co-teach, and engage in professional learning alongside our fellow educators. The strategies we help refine and implement ultimately benefit every student in our schools. Our work is not separate from teaching. It is an extension of it. By removing instructional coaches and other impacted groups from the teacher contract, this decision fundamentally misrepresents the nature of our work. It sends a message that our role is not instructional, despite the fact that we dedicate our time, knowledge, and passion to improving teaching and learning every day. Furthermore, it would create an unnecessary division among educators who share the same mission, supporting student learning. Just as classroom teachers advocate for the conditions that allow them to be successful, so too must instructional coaches and other instructional professionals. Excluding us from negotiations risks creating inequities in compensation, job security, and professional recognition. Keeping our roles within the existing contract structure ensures that all those who contribute to student achievement have a voice in shaping the policies that affect our schools. We urge you to allow us to remain on the teacher contract and that the job groupings or positions recognized as part of the negotiation unit for the current contract remain the same for the upcoming 25-27 contract negotiations. Doing so not only acknowledges the role we play in the education system, but also ensures stability and support for the teachers and students in this district. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Ron, and I'm assuming it's Gugesberg. Okay, thanks. I got the G, but beyond that, it wasn't
Hard to read.
Sorry,
I
I got there.
apologize.
It's okay.
Ron Gugesberg. I live in the South High School district area. Go Bruins. Tried to clean up for you guys, but I lost a fight to the erasers, so hope that doesn't distract. I'm here to read a letter on behalf of Amy Baloff. She's a Washington Elementary counselor, and she wanted to apologize for not being here, but wanted to still have her voice heard through these words. She says, I know there's a lot of conversation about taking specific groups off the teacher contract recently because they are considered non-teachers. Here's a little bit more about what we do as elementary counselors in the district. As elementary counselors, we spend the majority of our time with all students, whether we are teaching our regular scheduled whole classroom lessons and life skills they will use throughout their adult lives, running both community and restorative circles with classrooms, working with small groups of students on a number of specific topics, and with individuals who need additional support. In so many of these experiences, we are teaching them how to cope with big emotions, helping support them through family changes and loss, work through missing parents who are serving as part of the military, are incarcerated, are severely ill, dealing with the effects of poverty, or away for their jobs, and also in day-to-day peer and friend challenges. Teachers teaching them to resolve conflicts and problem solve. We are also in regular contact with families in regards to student needs, attendance concerns, MTSS behavioral support, and student separation anxiety. We also help build a positive culture in our schools, helping with food drives, collections, and donations to various charities, hosting kindness retreats, and creating kindness weeks throughout our buildings. Many of the elementary counselors agree with other groups that spoke at the previous school board meeting. We should continue to be on the current teacher contract. I hope this gives you all a better understanding of the ways in which we are teachers in our buildings too, even if we aren't teachers in classrooms for the entire day. We should not have a classroom, or we may not have a classroom of 20 to 24 students with us all day, but every student in our building is our student. We work with them all throughout all of their years in elementary school. We simply teach them wherever we are throughout our buildings, helping to meet each of their needs every day. Thank you for your consideration. And again, this is from Amy Baloff. She's a Washington Elementary School counselor. And I guess on a personal note, I'd just like to say that just because you can take somebody's right away doesn't mean you should. And it seems like these people really want to still be involved in the teachers union. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your comments. And our final speaker is Michelle Strand.
Hi, my name is Michelle Strand, and I live in the Fargo School District. I am currently a teacher at Fargo South, but I'm really here speaking as a parent and my parent as a parent experience with the counselors. Both my kids went through Fargo Public Schools and went through Fargo South. And both of my sons had mental health challenges when they were in high school at a certain point when they just couldn't handle the school day. And they found an advocate. And the reason they got through the day was because of a counselor, in particular Mrs. Eider, who was up here just briefly. Right now, they are both very successful in college, largely in part to the fact that she taught them skills to get themselves through their mental health challenges. And they taught my kids those things. I, as a classroom teacher, I'm focused on content. I don't have the skills to teach kids the social emotional stuff, but the counselors do on a regular basis. The school couldn't function without them. They're an integral part of every student's education and should not be reclassified. They deserve the same rights and benefits as teachers because that's exactly what they are. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you very much for your comments. Okay, the next item up on our agenda is our FEA report, and so we welcome Ms. Laura Haugen Christensen, sorry. It's combining Laura and Haugen and Christensen and all the names.
So, you know me by now. I'm about philosophy and fiction and values clarification and true crime. I like subterfuge and strategy, but I don't really have the attention span for it. I am judgy about conspiracy theories, and I am conflict averse. So it's distressing for me to watch what's going on in our apparently nonfiction world. Periodically, I try not to watch, but I can't not. We see communities trying to pull together to support fellow human beings, and they are disparaged. The meaning of truth is somehow relative. In public education, the foundation of equal opportunity, even of democracy itself, public education is under concerted attack at state and federal levels. In the North Dakota legislature right now, we have what seems to me to be a record number of bills that will impact public education and our working families. Identifying, researching, and being able to explain the proposed legislation is, to me, more magic than math. We are all indebted to the experts who help us learn and advocate for our kids and our families. Big gratitude to the AFL-CIO, North Dakota United, and our own Robin Nelson. You have heard from many, many teachers and community members who ask you, the board, to maintain the negotiating unit as it is now. Defining what a teacher does is not straightforward or simple, nor can it be quick and easy. There is little that is absolute and concrete about what a teacher does at a given moment. Directly instructing in a room with students in desks. Sitting with a student who just needs a quiet minute. Helping students read and speak with fluency. Suggesting reading materials or hobbies to suit a student's interests. Just being a safe adult. Collaborating with other teachers to design and deliver and analyze tools to help students learn. Modeling critical thinking and research skills, designing interventions and enrichments, all of this is for setting up our kids to explore and be ready for all the opportunities we hope will be there for them when we send them out. We all do all that. Since our last meeting, Grand Forks and Williston school boards have accepted their respective education associations' petitions and negotiating units. Regardless of how this comes out, I speak for hundreds and hundreds of people when I thank you for your time, your thoughtful engagement and responses when we reached out to you, hoping to help you understand what we do as teachers. is not about sides and winning. We are all on the same side, but it feels like a win that we have been heard. We appreciate the effort and heart that have gone into your deliberations thus far on the topic of our negotiating unit and your decision tonight on the recommendation from the negotiations committee. Thank you for hearing me.
Thank you very much, Laura. Okay, so I think it's time for us all to take a deep breath here, and we're going to hear some legislative updates from Robin.
I need to take a deep breath before this report. Okay, I did hear from a couple of people that were wondering exactly how we were involved in the legislative process, and some that suggested we get more involved. So I think it's timely to give an overview of how our district is involved in the state legislative process. I will also talk about funding, because that's very important for our district and everybody that works here, and then I will highlight some specific legislation. So an overview of how our district and our committee, Governmental Affairs Committee, is involved and working with legislators. Staff have submitted testimony submitted by principals, administrators, and teaching and learning. Dr. Gandhi and Tara help write legislation, specifically fairness in suspension and expulsion. Tara compiled a list of 164. Are we still at 164? You just quit counting. Okay, so when she does that list, she puts the names of everybody who she wants to reach out to get feedback on how this legislation would affect how they deliver education. And let's see here. And then she gets their feedback, opinions, and it's a pretty comprehensive list. Our committee itself, Government Affairs Committee, we send weekly updates with our support or opposition with rationale on bills that will be heard in upcoming committees. We submit testimony. We send periodic emails for specific bills that need detailed information. And I field multiple questions daily from local legislators and even a few outside our district that just want, within 30 seconds, how many ELL learners we have, how does our building fund work, and our excess mill levies. So they expect me to answer in 30 minutes or 30 seconds, and I try my best to do that. And then last week I conducted 6 media inquiries or interviews. So those are some of the activities that we partake in. We had a fabulous Governmental Affairs Committee meeting last Friday, and our committee dove into several bills, and I really appreciate their feedback because that helps me relay that in our weekly updates. So thank you, GAC members. Funding. There's a couple big things we really need to watch. Even though the governor had only put in a per pupil increase of 2% and 2% each year of the biennium, there is legislation that has been submitted that is a 3 and a 3. And so we need to continue to watch that and advocate for a higher increase. I will also say that maybe not, well, perhaps more importantly, there is a property tax relief and reform effort going on, and that seems to be the top priority for our legislators and leadership. What we are seeing right now, I want to draw your attention to House Bill 1176. This bill would place a cap of 3% annual growth in our budgets. It will wipe out any excess mill levies that have been approved by our local voters. So Jackie, I'm going to ask for your help here. Right now, our local voters approved for 10 years, which was allowed in Century Code prior to this session, an excess mill levy vote, and we currently levy from our property tax owners 126.78 mills. Okay, and then what are we allowed through the state if that were to go away? 75. So we will be drastically reducing the amount of levies, consequently dollars, from our local property taxes, which will have drastic impacts on what we offer within our school district and compensate all our employees with. So please, please, please watch that. So a couple highlights. I watched some testimony today on the floor. 1176, again, that seems to be the prevailing property tax bill. Several amendments were made in committee work last week, and some of them were changed today on the floor. But I would say that these excess approved levies that Fargo locally have said that they want, on top of what is being limited by the state, they will now remain until the expiration in March of 2027. So thank you, thank you, thank you. They are listening to our local voters, and I assume that means the same for excess mill levy or for the building fund. That one I'm a little questionable because that has no sunset. Some other things that have happened, this was corrected today on the floor, excess mill levy elections during a primary election, we need a simple majority to pass. If it were to be held in a special election, it would need a 60 plus 1% to pass, but that special election, I think, was wiped out today. So now only excess mill levy votes can happen in a primary or a general election, and likely in a general election. At least that's my observation without seeing the written amendments. There seems to be a priority for essential services, and education is, from what I'm hearing, is not an essential service. So what they are talking about is police, fire, city services, and things like that. So they might be getting some special carve-outs in this bill. Initially, in the amendments, only cities and counties would be allowed to opt out of the 3% cap approved by voters for a period of up to 10 years. It sounds like that will change. I will also say, as I understand it right now, if we wanted an excess mill levy, we would need to go to the voters every year to approve that. That's not how our budgets works. That's not how our negotiated agreements works. There was some talk on the floor today about raising that to 2. This will continue to evolve. It likely will be finalized on the floor tomorrow and then head to appropriations next. And then there are already some amendments that are being discussed that will happen on the Senate side. So any questions on the funding stuff? Go ahead, Ally.
Sorry, just one. We had talked about, is it 1108 and the other property tax bill? Do we have any updates on that one?
1168 was Scott Lauser's bill.
Yes.
He is a school board member. I have not heard anything about 1168. However, he did stand up and speak on the floor today. It was hard to connect all the dots because I didn't have the written amendments in front of me. So you have my commitment that I'll continue to look through that and provide you with updates, but it seems like that was discounted in this conversation. 1176 is being prioritized by leadership and the governor's office. So, that's funding. I have all kinds of fun things to report today, guys. Sorry. Some of our categorical responses that we share is we oppose using any public dollars for private educational choices. We also opposed curriculum mandates, and the blanket statement that I have given our legislators is, you will note our standard opposition to curriculum mandates. While often well-intended, such mandates may inadvertently force districts to eliminate other valuable coursework, duplicate existing content already embedded in class syllabi, and strain the limited time of our educators in our buildings. So a lot of these are really well intended. There was some required half credits for financial literacy or human trafficking, but every time there's a mandate like that, something else has to fall off the other end. So we need to figure out how to prioritize those, and I would prefer that we do that at a local level. And so even no matter how good it sounds, we categorically oppose that. Let's see what else we got here. And then a couple highlights of legislation. It's been a rough couple weeks, you guys. Okay, so school meals bills. 1553 was from Lori Beth Hager, and that used the legacy fund for funding. 1475 was from Hattelstad out of Williston, that used the general fund. 1553 was got a do not pass in committee. And 1475 got a do pass, My estimation on this is that 1475, using the general fund, will be linked, they are setting up this path to be able to use out of the general fund, school meals in the ESA bill as a component of the marketplace à la carte choices. So that's clearly what I expect. I will continue to advocate for separate funding for multiple reasons. And I have the privilege of serving on the Together for School Meals Coalition with Laura that is put together by Prairie Action. A couple other pieces that I want to highlight. We're in a room full of school counselors right now. There was a bill, you know what I'm going to say, House Bill 1490, required to the biannual required psychological evaluations for school counselors. We opposed that, and my comments were insulting and unnecessary. And this seems to be directed to a single issue. And indeed, when I watched the testimony today, it is. There was a constituent wanted this bill written for personal experiences of abuse that should be handled at the district level, not in Century Code. Did I say that diplomatically, President Christensen? Yes. Okay. There are a couple student eligibilities for school sports and activities. Todd Olson and Travis Christensen wrote some fabulous opposition testimony on that. You can see that online. And then there's a lot of curriculum mandates that we opposed. And then one that will be heard tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. in Senate Education is Senate Bill 2355. And that's relating to the intelligent design science context standards in elementary and secondary students. I will close by saying how this reads is this: the superintendent of public instruction shall include intelligent design in the state science content standards for elementary, middle, and high school students by August 1st of 2027. The superintendent shall provide teachers with instructional materials demonstrating intelligent design is a viable scientific theory for the creation of all life forms, and provide in-service training necessary to include intelligent design as part of the science content standards. So that's the kind of legislation we're working on right now. Any other bills that anybody wants me to highlight? No? Okay, I'm going to close in saying, please forgive me if I have not acknowledged all of the emails that we received. I read them all. I'm pretty busy with legislative activity. Please know my time is committed to serve the district and also the families that I serve at the Boys and Girls Club. So I may not have responded, but I have read every single message. So thank you for all you do. I do think we are partners in defending public education because it needs to be defended right now. That's it.
That's it. That's it. That's all. We got it. All right. Well, thank you, Robin. It's very obvious that this is a really big task and can be draining at times. So I appreciate your commitment in keeping us all in the loop too. Next, we have an administration report from Dr. Gandhi.
Thank you. I will skip over legislative stuff since Robin covered that very well. I think there are 13 bills on the House floor related to education today and tomorrow, and then 5 on the Senate floor. So admin will continue monitoring that as well. At the last governance meeting, we did ask the board, just on the business end, we're going to move back the approval of the Unified Strategic and Operational Plan to April, and we won't have strategic reflections in March, solely because of the timing of the March meeting having right after spring break, and then we wouldn't be able to get you meaningful data to be able to provide that. I also just wanted to take a time to recognize, I know that we have a lot of good conversations related to the system and the business at this dais during board meeting, but I also just want to acknowledge our staff. This has been probably a very hard week in Fargo Public Schools. We've had, unfortunately, multiple staff tragedies across multiple buildings, so I just want to recognize that our staff at Lincoln, South High School, Bennett High School, there's just been a lot of kind of hardships, but our staff continue to show up every single day, cover for one another, and just want to remind us that we're all human here, and we always have to deal with some hard stuff in our district too. And just want to acknowledge the fact that we can have professional conversations, but it's our people that are showing up every single day for our kids, and I'm just incredibly proud of the work of our district. Our human capital team has been out in buildings, checking in on staff, making sure that we have sub coverages across all of those buildings this week. We know we have a lot of teachers stepping up and filling in for one another as well. So just wanted to call that out and say it's been kind of a difficult week for Fargo in terms of some staff hardships, but our staff continue to show up every single day. So thank you.
Okay, thank you for that report. Next, I look for approval of our consent agenda. Nikki.
I move approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, we have approval, or we have a motion from Nikki and approval from Ally? Is that right? Okay. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Any opposition, same sign? Okay, and motion passes. This now takes us to our business section. Our one and only item today is memo number 74, the determination of appropriate negotiating unit. Jason?
Yeah, I'd like to declare I have a conflict. My wife is a fourth grade teacher in the district, but I feel like I can be part of this discussion because she is not classified in one of the groups that is being removed from the definition of classroom teacher. I feel like I can be fair.
Can you make your motion?
Yep. I'll make a motion to participate in the discussion and voting regarding the determination of appropriate negotiation unit memo 74.
Does anybody want to second that?
I can second that.
Was that Melissa? That was, sorry. Ally, okay. We have a motion from Jason and we have a second from Ally. So the way this is going to work is Jason is going to state his case and then as a board, we vote. And this type of approval actually needs unanimous approval from our board, not a board quorum. Hi. Yes, Greg?
I have to declare my conflict of interest right now because I can't vote
Okay.
on
Okay.
Jason's motion.
Hang on.
I don't think that you should be voting on each other's motions.
So he's withdrawing himself from that conversation and that vote. Okay, so now you get to share why.
I had that backwards, sorry.
It's all right.
No, my wife's a fourth grade teacher, so she's not included in the groups that are being discussed as far as being removed as a defined classroom teacher. I feel like I can be fair and unbiased in this conversation and vote.
Okay, do we take discussion and questions? Okay, is there any discussion or questions about Jason's motion? Okay, so then, oh, you have go ahead.
Yeah, I don't have an issue because I don't see the direct conflict, so
Okay.
I don't have an issue.
Thank you. Any other comments? No? Okay, so Anne Marie, can you do the roll call?
Olenberger? Yes. Berglund? I'm sorry. I mean, yes, that he can participate.
Yes.
Okay,
I was
sorry.
just means he
Clarify
can,
that too.
okay,
Yeah.
Good
Yes,
point.
participate.
Yes means Jason can participate. Okay, so Ally, yes.
Berglund? Yes. Day?
Yes.
Gullickson?
Yes.
Kristen Nelson?
Yes.
Robin Nelson?
Yes.
Christensen Minear?
Yes. So that motion passes 7-0. Greg?
I could do the same thing. So I have a conflict of interest because my wife is also on the teacher contract. She is a elementary librarian at Claire Barton and Hawthorne. And I would like to also move that I get to participate in the discussion of item 7A.
Okay, so we have a motion, and that motion needs a second.
Second.
Okay, so motion from Greg, second from Melissa. And would you like to, yes, Greg?
So I think similar to Jason, can be unbiased in this conversation because my wife and her group as a elementary librarian. They are also no longer being reconsidered for their inclusion in the negotiating unit. Correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. McKenna, but as of 2:58 p.m. today, that decision was communicated with elementary librarians. So I think my conflict is pretty minimal.
Okay, any other questions or discussion on this one? Does Jason get to vote on this since we let him in? No, okay, sorry. Okay, let's do a roll call, please.
Berkland,
Yes.
Day,
Yes.
Gullickson,
Yes.
Kristen Nelson,
Yes.
Robin Nelson,
Yes.
Willenberger,
Yes.
Christensen Meinier.
Yes. Okay, motion passes 7-0. Okay, so now we're back to the determination of appropriate negotiating unit, and I'm going to turn this over to Melissa as Chair of Negotiations to introduce this to us.
Sure. Thank you so much, President Christensen Meinier. I'm going to read the memo that was circulated, Memo 74, make my motion, and then with all luck, log on to the screen to share a PowerPoint presentation just to kind of frame up the issue. So on November 8th, 2024, the North Dakota Supreme Court issued a decision in Fargo Education Association versus Fargo School District 1, case number 2024-0151, affirming the lower court's ruling to deny the Fargo Education Association's writ of mandamus, seeking a rescission of school psychologist contracts and the Full Circle Pediatric Solutions contract to provide special education services. The case, it used a three-part test mirroring the statutory language to analyze whether a school psychologist was a teacher under the statute, and held that one must be 1, a school employee, 2, licensed or approved to teach by the ESPB, and 3, employed primarily as a classroom teacher. Following this decision, Human Capital began reviewing job descriptions for many categories of employees for potential reclassification. On January 8th, 2025, the Fargo Education Association presented the board with a petition for recognition of the appropriate negotiating unit, which the board recognized as the appropriate unit at its January 14th, 2025 meeting. At the February 3rd, 2023 negotiations committee meeting, our committee agreed to forward to the board the recommendation that the job groupings or positions recognized as part of the negotiating unit for the 2023-2025 contract, which cites to the statutory definition, remain the same for the 2025-2027 contract negotiations. And the negotiation committee further agreed that it was appropriate for Human Capital to continue reviewing job descriptions with staff input to ensure job descriptions are accurate and appropriately capture an employee's work. So to kick off our conversation, I would move that the job groupings or positions recognized as part of the negotiating unit for the 2023-2025 contract remain the same for the 2025-2027 contract.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion from Melissa, and we have a second from Nimal. And so now we have time for discussion, and so I'm going to go back to Melissa, because you are going to present this to us, correct?
Yes.
Okay. If technology cooperates.
If technology. Okay. Okay. So we haven't really ever talked about this case together as a group. So I'm going to kind of take us way back to hopefully explain a little bit of where we came from and why we're here today. So as I mentioned, and as if those of you were on the board in 2023 that heard the grievance, you'll remember that the school psychologist had been taken off of the negotiated agreement. They had presented and asked to be taken off of it. We did that, and then the FEA filed a grievance, lost the grievance. The board agreed that school psychologists were not teachers as defined by the statute, and so they appealed that decision to district court. The district court agreed with the school board, and so the FEA further sought review to the North Dakota Supreme Court. And what happened is the North Dakota Supreme Court affirmed the lower court's ruling denying the writ of mandamus to rescind the school psychologist contract, and essentially held that school psychologists were not teachers for the purposes of the statute or for the purposes of the negotiating unit. So we just want to be clear that the statute hasn't changed since 2002. We've changed the way we look at it, but the statute has always been a teacher means a public school employee licensed to teach or approved by the Educational Standards and Practices Board and employed primarily as a classroom teacher. And because courts love a three-part test, they just broke it up and said there's essentially three elements to what gets you into the negotiating unit. And I don't have to repeat it again. So what the court really looked at is, what do school psychologists do? What is the definition of their job? What are they doing in our schools? And found that, and they used a lot of really interesting definitions. They're licensed practitioners of the healing arts. They assess and place students in special education. They do research. They plan professional development for staff. But what the court was really careful to note, and both the lower court and the Supreme Court noted this too, is that there was no evidence presented by either party that the school psychologists were teachers. Nobody came forward and was saying, like, this is the information that we have about their job and this is why we think that they're a teacher. So what the court also did is it overruled the only other case that even touched upon what is a classroom teacher, and that was a case from, I think, 2001-ish, called Hilton versus the Center Education Association. And Hilton had been, he had a PhD in counseling. He did not want to be on the negotiated agreement. He sued the Education Association saying, like, please take me off. I don't want to be a part of this. And the Supreme Court said, no, like, you're not, you have to be on the agreement. And they had a very odd way of defining teacher. They really defined teacher by what it is not. They said you can be a teacher or an administrator. So you fall into one of those buckets. Because he's not an administrator, we're going to call him a teacher. So it was a very unhelpful case as far as defining the role of a teacher. And the court overruled it to the extent that we had been using that definition of if you're not an administrator, you're a teacher, irrespective of your assigned duties. So I do want to note, because I think this is important, the North Dakota Supreme Court did not address what it means to be employed primarily as a classroom teacher. It didn't talk about what duties would be considered teaching or educational. It didn't talk about what primarily means, although it hinted at it in a footnote. So to the extent that we're interpreting the statute, we have a little bit of flexibility, especially because that hasn't been confronted by any court in North Dakota yet. And again, like, nobody presented evidence. So we've had a little bit of guidance from the North Dakota School Board Association. If you remember from our December bulletin, they did a write-up about the case. They went through both of the issues, and then said, essentially identifying who falls within the definition of teacher will be important for all school boards entering into negotiations under the statute. Nikki and I attended the conference last week, and they did a whole session on our case. And it was presented by two of the attorneys that work at the North Dakota School Board Association, and then also Seth Thompson, who litigated on behalf of our district this very case. So he's obviously very close to the issue and has a lot of expertise. And one thing that he said that really struck me and is kind of informing why I'm advocating to keep our unit as it is for this session is that job descriptions are great and they're a good starting point, but they cannot be the only information we rely on. And this is a direct quote from Seth. If the facts on the ground are completely different from the job description description will not be very persuasive. So what he means is that if we get to litigation and there's a total mismatch between what an employee is actually doing and what their job description says, we will not be able to successfully argue that we took somebody off of the contract just because of what their job description says. So This is another direct quote from the conference. I just copied, he had a slide that said, what are your options after FEA versus Fargo? Ask yourself, what does the negotiating unit look like now? I will say, as far as this decision goes, and how we have categorized professional staff, we are years ahead of some of the other districts. We do not have school psychologists on. We don't have PTs, OTs, social workers, SWIFTs. There's a lot of folks that we have put onto our professional staff contract that other districts are continuing to put on their negotiated agreement. And why I'm saying that is I think we are taking a careful look at what classroom teacher means. And a lot of those jobs aren't primarily employed as a classroom teacher, so we've appropriately removed them. So your other options are to leave the unit as is. So whatever you did last session, leave that unit as is. Modify the unit to only include those individuals who are employed primarily as a classroom teacher, do a case-by-case analysis, and then again, he's saying job descriptions could be important. And then what if the negotiated unit already includes a description of the unit? This case presentation kind of came at an interesting time because many districts have already been approving petitions. So here's why I'm advocating that we leave our unit intact. It's because no cases have been litigated that truly describe what a classroom teacher is. And I think there can be compelling arguments made. I think we're very proud of our innovative learning spaces at Fargo Public Schools. I think we need to think beyond the walls of a classroom. When I hear the counselors talk about how they're educating students on social emotional learning skills, and that's just one example, I am conceptualizing a teacher, somebody who is educating our students. So I feel like this is perhaps a more cautious road because we've heard, or I believe we've heard, groups of people make arguments for why their roles in our schools are in fact teachers primarily. So I do think that we have a fairly decently high litigation risk if we're removing those people that are in fact employed primarily as classroom teachers. And I know it's not always, you don't always want to look to other districts and what they're doing, but I do think that it's informative in this time that many of the school districts that would be similar in size and scope as ours have left a lot of those descriptions on their unit for this upcoming negotiation session. And I think that it's important to really get engagement from staff, the FEA, to make sure that those job descriptions reflect what our teachers are actually doing. And I want to stress that I want to follow, and I'm urging us, like, we have to follow this statute. But what I'm saying is that I think we have some work to do as far as looking at what does a classroom teacher mean and what does it mean in our district? Because I've always thought that Fargo is special, but we have we have a virtual learning academy. We have a self-directed academy. We have, I consider us to be fairly innovative. And so I want us to be really thoughtful about what classroom teacher is. And finally, I just want to make sure that no matter what happens, whether somebody is on or off the negotiated agreement is in no way a value judgment on your role at FPS. You are important, essential, and changing students' lives no matter what. So I just want to make sure that we are giving every employee the opportunity to be heard, to share with us why they do or do not think they are a classroom teacher. And that's why I'm asking that we keep this as we recognized 2 years ago.
Okay, thank you, Melissa, very much. So I'm assuming we're going to have some discussion and some questions here. And I think just to keep things nice and smooth, it's always very helpful if you can just like wave a little finger at me. So we really only have one person speaking at a time, and I promise I'll try to get to everyone. But I think Robin was already waving her finger at me. So I will start with you.
Closest to you. So can we just all agree that teaching and learning can and often does occur outside of a traditional classroom? I think we all agree about that. So please know that I don't think we're separating that. And can we all also acknowledge that all school employees are highly valuable and important? Okay. So I feel so bad for those that have had to try to convince us that they are important enough to be on the contract. Everybody's important. So please know that. I speak that way individually, but it's pretty obvious our board does too. I want to open this up with two questions. What is the district's interpretation of the three-prong test, specifically the part that includes employed primarily as a classroom teacher? And question number two is, where are you in the process of working with various education groups to refine the job descriptions?
I'll start and then I'll turn it over to Dr. McKenna. Essentially where I would start was I would say that the position and the motion you have before you is against my legal advice as your general counsel. I would note that NDSBA is a membership-driven organization. They cannot provide you legal guidance. I am your general counsel, and at the end of the day, my obligation is to the district, and the advice I give you is what is in the best interest of the district. Not any individual employee, not the negotiating unit, not ND United. And so I give you that. The hard part about the definition is what we're looking at is primarily that third prong. Nobody is negating that the individuals in the audience or the people we're talking about don't meet the first and second prong. Employed by a district and holding a license by ESPB. The third prong is employed primarily as a classroom teacher. It is an archaic definition given by the legislature that has not been defined by a court. And so as lawyers, what we're required to do is look at the plain language of the statute and say, what does that mean? In its opinion, the Supreme Court said it's unambiguous and it doesn't require additional resources to determine what it means. And so what we would say is, are you primarily serving in a classroom teacher role? Jeff is going to speak to what that means and how his team went about doing that. I'm going to fully admit that I am not an educator by trade. So I did not review the job descriptions because Jeff and our team they are educators by trade. They know what these positions do. They are in the work. And so they made that decision. But what I want to highlight is that even though the Supreme Court says the term is unambiguous, meaning we know what it means, if we look at the definition of the words, they also said back, and I can't remember what year it was, but the North Dakota United went to the legislature and they said, we want to add additional employment categories to this definition of classroom teacher. Counselors, school psychologists, I believe librarians was one of them, and the legislature said no. So if they met that definition, why did we approach the legislature with that? With that, I'll turn it over to Jeff to explain how his team went through.
Can I interject really quickly? So and this is just what I've gathered over the years, whether anybody agrees or disagrees, North Dakota is a right to work state. And a small segment of collective bargaining is allowed for certain public sector employees. However, the law is pretty specific and exclusionary. Not that I agree with it, but it means that not all school employees are covered. And from what I've learned, that is intentional by our state legislature. And regardless of any of our preferences, that is simply true in my observation. And quite frankly, the only way we're going to get more clarity on this, I think is an ambiguous definition, is going to come from our state legislature. I'll stop there.
I would also note on that, a well-known legal practice in the state of North Dakota, attorney general opinions carry the force and effect of a court decision or law until a court says otherwise. There are Attorney General's opinions, especially specifically the legal opinion 2009 L04, which states that a political subdivision only has the authority specifically granted to it in law. Meaning, if the law doesn't say you can do something specifically, you don't have that right. My position is that you do not have the right to include individuals within the bargaining unit if they do not meet that statutory definition. And so ultimately, at the end of the day, our objective was to determine who meets that definition set by the legislature of primarily employed as a classroom teacher in the event that we are ever put into the position where we are subject to litigation again, so that we can feel confident to defend it.
Do you have a question on this particular issue still? Okay, sorry, Jeff. Ally.
So right now, my understanding, Tara, is that the only thing that we would have is if, say, a counselor wanted to be off of the unit, off of the negotiation unit, if you will, right? Then they would collectively sue, if you will, right? And then that's what would cause the litigation.
You're correct. I would
So,
note.
I mean, my only point to that is I know that I've received at least 100 plus emails from the people that are being asked to be taken off in part of classification, and every single one of them want to stay. So to Melissa's point on like the risk of litigation, I don't really see one in this situation because everybody that's being told to be removed, they all want to stay. So none of them are going to come at the district, at least over the next 2 years, to try to sue us, in my opinion, for what it's worth.
That's not true.
I would refer to Dr. McCanna on, because we have received communications from staff members who have said that they do not want to be part of the unit, and that they're not sure how to come forward necessarily. The other thing is we're not considering the fact that we will continue to hire. What about the individuals we're bringing in from the outside? They haven't been given the opportunity to speak yet, but fair point.
Robin, did you?
I was just going to say, I have received a handful of emails and messages and calls that don't want to be on there. So I think we would be ripe for litigation. But unfortunately, those people, those plaintiffs, would have to spend money to sue the district. And quite frankly, I think they'd win. But
So may I follow up with a little bit with what you said? So what we started doing was we took every position we had in the district that was classified as a teacher, and we put up, as I shared believe with all of you, the job description. And what we did to level set is we looked at what really nobody could dispute as a primary teacher, right? 4th grade teacher, 3rd grade teacher, 9th grade math teacher, 11th grade English teacher, just so we really understood in those job descriptions what are positions that are primarily, and we looked up that word in the dictionary just to make sure we understood these positions are primarily teaching positions. And so then if you saw the document, we took those off because it was fairly easy to, in our understanding, have been teachers, being assistant principal, being a building principal, being in HR since 2003, my colleagues all having been teachers, APs, building principals, and we looked at the job description extensively, followed up with questions with leadership to like any gray areas. And if there was a gray area, we defaulted to, yeah, that's a gray area. We put yes. So what we did is we didn't, when we were looking at the job description, although, again, and I don't know how to say it more heartfelt than this, this is hard work, right? None of us in this room, none of us in this district want to be going through this, but we can't really pick and choose when we have to go through the hard times, right? It's something that we have to be challenged with. My lens was not to make anybody happy or make anybody sad or angry or mad or cheerful. Our job was really just to solely look without being pressured, without people wanting to leave or wanting to stay. That to me, although I'm empathetic with it, was not a care in the world for me. It wasn't about wanting to out or wanting in. It was simply looking at the job descriptions. And we did. And we then made that decision. And nobody's inaccurate, right? There are people that work with kids, and we didn't care if that was in a specific classroom or not. We looked at it, is that their primary job? Uh, Not supplemental, not supportive, but when you look at those job descriptions, even if it's embedded in some teaching, it's not chiefly the job that they were doing with that job description. So on January the 8th, we met with Laura and Dave, and I respect Laura immensely. She is an amazing advocate in the work. We are on the same page more often than we're not. She is committed at all 7 days a week. So what we did at that time is we met with them and we shared with them, these are what we think, right? This is what we think where we're landing. And we wanted to do that in a in a way of collaborating, right? Because again, you can't, and Seth said this, he said it to you, he shared that with Tara and I. You cannot solely use the job description. And the meeting, the purpose of that initial meeting on January the 8th was, is this job description accurate of the work, and give us feedback and give us comments. And we had a follow-up conversation or an email on January 21st that indicated that comments and questions would be forthcoming. And then on January the 8th, the last board meeting right before that, the decision was made that there wasn't going to be any comments or there weren't going to be any questions. We intentionally had the meeting with staff on February the 4th, the first meeting with staff, because we wanted the opportunity to have staff engagement, to volley back and forth, and to maybe get some clarification on some things that we weren't really mindful of or understanding, because we solely went from the job descriptions. That meeting on February the 4th was as a hard meeting, but it's about the best meeting you could have. And what I feel like we walked away from that meeting was, we need some time to really look at our job descriptions, provide feedback and updates and adjustments. And so far, several groups are working on that and doing that. And we got the elementary, the middle school, and the high school librarian literacy media specialist job descriptions. We are very intentional about the walkthrough we do. Nothing is haphazardly done or quickly done. And one of the things, if you looked at the transcript from that meeting, there were a lot of people that wanted just additional time to make sure the job description is accurate. So the hope is that each one of these groups will get an opportunity to say, this is truly our job description. And we look at that, we do the evaluation, that's a work in progress. And then we make that determination, do we think? And one of the things I've tried to make clear all along is, we were just our thoughts, right? We didn't say anybody couldn't be on it. We just said, based on the three-prong information that we got from the Supreme Court, these are who we think would not be aligned with primarily a classroom teacher. At no point did we make the assumption that that was 100% accurate. It was based solely on the accuracy of the job descriptions that were given from us. We have had a number of staff that have called, and I tell staff, whether they're in support or against, I appreciate listening, but I'm not, I get it, but my job is not to do anything but come up with a job description is accurate. And the staff are concerned because we do have staff in the same categories of the people that were speaking tonight that do not want to be part of this agreement, that don't feel like they're classroom teachers, that have said, we've met and we've been told we need to really be in lockstep and be forth, and they don't know how to deal with that. So I did share with them, contact the board with your beliefs, but that doesn't help me, right? You not wanting to be on the negotiated agreement, I don't care. It doesn't, I'm not trying to win or lose. This is not about doing that. This is simply us doing the job that we're tasked with. And that is the best that we can. You make a decision whether they're part of a primary teacher or not. And so my ask would be, let us finesse through this process and work with the members of those groups to get an accurate job description if it's not, and then make the decision. And I would also hope that we might consider it instead of wholesale, because there are groups that would probably tell you, maybe some, that we know we're not part of we know there's no dispute. And probably some of the same people would say there is. So that's the work that we've done, Robin. We have more work to do because we're caught off guard a little bit, but we've started that work. And I have to say that in very tough situations, I'm super proud of the professionalism of our staff. In the conversations I've had on the phone, I couldn't be more proud to do tough work with the people that are, whether they're in this room or they weren't able to make it tonight. These are hard conversations to have. And hopefully, we try to reinforce that this is not about your position isn't valued. It doesn't add to the return on the investment of our kiddos. It's just the job description we reviewed does not, in our opinion, align with being primarily a classroom teacher.
Other questions? Greg?
Going back to the conversation before Dr. McKenna spoke about litigation risks, we discussed the risks of including someone who doesn't want to be on the contract and doesn't believe they should be on the contract, but could someone confirm for me that there are litigation risks of inappropriately removing someone from the contract?
I think there are risks of both, which is why human capital was so extraordinarily diligent in their work, and which is why they're asking for additional time to ensure that they have met all of it. They've met with individuals who felt like their job descriptions weren't accurate to revise those and make them accurate.
So yes, there are litigation risks if we remove someone from the contract inappropriately.
There are risks both ways.
Yeah, well, that's why I started with we established one. I was trying
Yes.
to, thank you. When is the deadline that we need to have the negotiating unit?
The
kind of
district has
settled?
already accepted the petition for the negotiating unit. You accepted on January 14th, 2025. You accepted it as the statutory definition. At this point in time, nothing is required until we receive proof from the FEA that they have signatures to meet the requirements to be the entity that represents that negotiating unit.
Right, but in order for them to do that and for us to know whether or not they've given us the proper amount of signatures, we would presumably need to know the number of employees that we believe to be a teacher in order to get the proper number from their signatures, correct?
Nothing prohibits them from gathering those signatures at this time while the district continues to work on that.
Right, but at some point, we need to know the denominator of teacher in order for the,
Yes.
okay. So do we know when that deadline is?
The deadline in statute is March 1st for the FEA to provide us their evidence that they represent 50+1.
Okay, thank you. Greg, do you have okay. You want to keep going?
I would, thank you.
You're welcome.
So that gives us, let's see, 17 days till the last day of February. And Dr. McKenna just indicated that he wanted more time. The first staff meeting was February 4th, so 1 week ago. One employee group so far that was originally deemed not a teacher has gone through the full process, right? So that took 1 week. How many other groups could potentially go through that process?
Tara, would you like to respond to that?
I think I would just like to say that Dr. McCanna's team has been working on this since
Oh,
the
yeah,
Supreme
no.
Court decision came out. We provided this information to the FEA at the beginning of January. The 3-week delay was due to the FEA not responding to us and then telling us that they were not willing to participate in that discussion. Had we known that was where we were and that that conversation wasn't going to happen, we would have moved forward with those conversations ahead of time. I would look to Jeff as far as how much additional work his team needs to do, but at this point, we have compensation analysis and everything pretty much completed.
Yeah, that's a great question. The vast majority of these numbers are ones, right? Like most of these employee groups, that's why my ask would be that we don't wholesale anything. Most of these are one positions, one position, one position, 2 positions, 3 positions. We have some that are more, but I'll just tell you like one, like probably about 15 ones in a row, then a 3, then a 2, then a 4, then a 3, then a 2, then a 7 and a 3. Like you have the list, so you could really look at how many of these. So it would be dependent on if that one person felt like their job description wasn't accurate, right? Here's what we don't want, right? We don't want people finessing and finagling their job description because that's what they're going to have to do. But there are pools like, counselors is a bigger group, and I know they're working on that, right? I know the counselors are working on that. Student performance strategist is a bigger group of 12. And then we do have the secondary library media specialist with, I think, total is about 7. We have those done, right? So it's all dependent on how fast, if people truly believe their job description is not aligned, that they get it to us. And then we walk through it. And in all transparency, we probably could have knocked out the middle school and secondary this week. But honestly, we had to pivot because we had some personnel challenges with some tough things going on at our campus. And at the end of the day, that's going to trump some of this work when we have staff and that are needing support. So we're going to work through that fairly quickly.
Thank you, Jeff. Kristen?
So I met with an SLP at Explorers Academy. It sounds like their work is ready to present up. So if that work is ready to present up and they can get it to, this week, barring any other, bigger issues like you were talking about, what does that look like for completion?
Yeah, I would say that by the next board meeting, if we would work with groups, our goal is to now, we wanted to see what happened tonight, and we would have one-off meetings with each of those groups. We've had the whole group that on February 4th of anybody, but I feel like we need to get in it with those groups and talk through those pieces. And now, at the end of the day, I don't approve the job descriptions. The job descriptions are redone. They have to be approved by their supervisor, their cabinet level supervisor. I don't want to approve somebody's job description because I get it. So part of that would be having the cabinet level supervisor review it with however they're going to review it with their leaders, and then saying, to the HC team, this is the job description that is approved, and then we evaluate it. It really won't, it's very likely that you would get a list. You would get a list by next board meeting. Now, does that mean everybody's going to agree and be happy? Probably not. But at least what the staff would have is an opportunity to say, yeah, that's my job description.
Yeah.
And then, then the questions could come, do you trust the work that we did? And we're humans, right? And we tried to do the very best we could with what we had at that time.
Yep. And I think that's truly all that they're asking for is to, like we were saying before, those that are closest to the work and doing it need to be in on those collaborative conversations. There's smart folks out there who do that work every single day. And I do think the conversation needs to start with them. So we do need that to inform the decision we make.
Thank you. We have a question from Robin.
I think you might have answered it. So if there's disagreement of whether they're primarily a classroom teacher, does that halt this whole process? And where does that put us?
Well, I think that, I think we would have to talk through that, and we would share with the updated job description, right? We would have to talk through why we're landing where we're at, and we haven't had a chance yet to do that. Because, like, for example, if the elementary literacy specialist would have given us a job description that was, we still thought a no, then the next conversation with them is like, here's why we think it's a no. And they could say, well, maybe we could have wordsmithed this differently. And in their classroom is the library, right? We never looked at the location. We always looked at the work. So we may come to the board, and I highly doubt that we'll all be in agreement. And the board will then at that time just make a decision. Do they believe, and they'll have the job description to look at, that we scored it appropriately or not? And then, it will, at the end of the day, we're gonna have our marching orders, and we're gonna support anybody. The world won't end, the sky won't fall. We'll do what we've always done, and we'll move on, and we'll make the best out of whatever situation we're in.
Go ahead, Robin.
So this sounds like it's a time certain that this needs to be done according to Century Code. Could there be a mutual agreement on, well, we don't have the party yet approved, do we? A mutual agreement to delay? No, okay,
I don't think we have this authority to waive the statutory deadline.
okay.
Ally?
In those, so I personally have not received anyone that wants to be removed from the contract. Are those folks that have received those, are those part of those larger groups that we're talking about, like SLP and counselor?
Yeah.
They are, okay. So I guess my question then goes back to Jeff, if we do have a disagreement between, again, those larger groups, how do we handle that?
Yeah, I think we only handle it the way we've handled the other ones, and that is just base it solely on the job description. The ones that truly don't think they're part of the bargaining unit shared the same thing with the ones that do. We're solely basing it just on the job description. And that's a great question. We will just make this determination, and then the board, we'll leave it up to the board to determine, you could look at it and determine, like, do you feel like human capital reclassified that appropriately or not?
Thank you. Namal, did you have a question?
Yeah, I do. But it's based on the different academic levels because everybody is not the same, of course. They all have different roles, different educational backgrounds. Some are doctors, some are teachers, and of course, some of them went to some of them went to school longer. And it just me thinking about it, and some of those individuals who's saying that I don't want to be part of the contracts, and do they understand? I mean, what I'm trying to understand is this: there are pro and con off of this, and when you look at all of this, and it comes down to, do they understand that if they are still in the contract, this is the pro and con. If they are not, if they are off the contracts, this is the pro and con. So that way they have the option to say, okay, you know what, it's better for me to be in the contracts, or is better for me to be off the contract, so that way I can negotiate it myself, my own salary, my own benefit, my own of everything, because it sounds like some people definitely don't want to be part of the contracts.
Yeah, Madam
Sorry.
President, may I speak? Okay.
Yes, you can.
So I think that depending on, like, we have a roadmap of where we go, depending on what happens tonight, right? And so our next rollout would be for any staff that wanted to join us to go through the professional support staff terms of employment, right? So if they think they're not going to be part of the bargaining unit, to walk through that, they could pick and choose. We'd have a couple different times where we would talk through that. And then depending on what happens tonight, the next phases would be to meet with individuals or groups, right? If it's not one of these many one-offs, to talk through their job descriptions, where they're at, what time frame do they feel like they need to be at, in order to get us the feedback that they want. And, you know, the other thing is to clarify, like, you know, some of the concerns they had, you know, nobody will lose TFFR, right? And so we've tried to share that. Nobody will just be automatically fired. We're all held to due process in the state of North Dakota as public employees. And then, you know, just walk through the professional support, the differences, but then the similarities.
Robin, do you have another? No? Go ahead. Any other Jason?
That was one of my questions, was just seems to be a lot of fear or unknown out there as far as how they're paid, the IFRS, TFFR benefits. You briefly touched on that. I mean, I know you've done some market analysis and things like that. Can you just touch high level on what some of those changes might be for staff?
Yeah, well, I mean, right now we've looked at where everybody would fall for compensation, and it's not a blanket, right? There are different groups that are considered critical needs that have a market outside of FPS that we would have to compare salaries to and compensation to. We already do equity adjustments across the board for all other employee groups. We've done it since I've gotten here. Jackie helps find, you know, we do that because we look and see where our employee groups are compared to Moorhead or West Fargo. And then we also look at industry to determine, like, where is it that these employees that are outside of the bargaining unit, what are they getting paid, and are we competitive? It is in our strategic plan that will be competitive in all of these groups. And we all get the same raise, but then there are equity adjustments because of what the market drives us. You know, it's hard to always predict where everybody's going to be at, but we've started that work, and you know, we have a lot of people already under the professional support terms of employment. It's a mid-max framework where there's not the max is really like who's making the most. You don't stop there. You don't have a final, like, this is my last lane, whatever adjustments are on that max piece. We do have for placement only, because we know that money. So what we do is we put people on a framework so that people are paid equitably. So you don't have somebody with 4 years of experience making more than somebody with 9. And we have a placement table so that if somebody comes in from outside, they don't jump our employees. We would do like we've always done. And if we have an outlier that's being underpaid, then we have an equity adjustment to align them with what their compensation should be. And this is common for professional support all over the United States, right? And in North Dakota.
Okay, do we have other questions? Nikki?
I'd like to just talk about a little bit about the fear Jason had brought up, and that's what I'm seeing behind a lot of the emails that I have. From all the research that I have done, I have asked for meetings with human capital, I have asked for meetings with legal and been granted those. There's a lot of fear, and one of the questions I asked, are there any protections reclassified staff would not have that they do have now under the professional classification? And the only thing that I was able to learn is that if there were a situation taking place where someone was being let go, you wouldn't have to come in front of the board. That's the only difference? Is that correct?
That's correct.
Because they would still have due process. People are saying they're going to get us off the contract, we're going to get fired, they're going to let us all go. We don't have the protections we have under the teacher contract. In the research that I have done, I have not found that to be true.
We don't discharge anyone in the Fargo Public School District without cause. Unless we're doing a massive reduction in force. That has not happened during my time. I would have to look to somebody as to the last time that's.
And we have the exact same playbook. We expect the same thing. It does not matter if what money you make, what position you have in the district. We have the same exact playbook for every position. I wouldn't want to be here if we didn't, right? Every single employee, whether they're on the bargaining unit or not, deserves due process. And we're in a market where if people don't like FPS, they can go somewhere else. So you have to treat your employees, regardless of whether they have a contract or not, with integrity. You have to treat them ethically, and it's focused on coaching and growing, just like any other, whether you're on the bargaining unit or not.
Robin, and then Ally, and then Greg.
So what I'm hearing, so I listened to a couple times the negotiations committee meeting. Melissa, I thought you did a great job leading that. I continued to hear a couple terms that stuck out for me: precedents and job descriptions. It seems to me like I still think that there are attorneys that disagree on these definitions. I tend to agree with Tara's interpretation, but that doesn't matter. I still respect other attorneys' interpretations. So would there be any value instead, I don't throw anything at me, to look at a 1-year contract instead of a 2? I know that's not fun, but well, it might give us some, so let's talk about it. Would that give us some time to clarify this? At the same, as soon as I say this, and I'm processing out loud here, really, I think the only fix is going to come from our state legislature and the clarity. And that is 2 years away. It's too late. I've been told, as I've looked into this, there can be some minor tweaks to century code, but I wouldn't consider this a minor tweak with the legislators that we have currently elected. So just processing out loud here. Because I tend to think there is some ambiguity in the definition of primarily a classroom teacher.
As someone who will be sitting at the negotiations table, I'm not super fond of having that conversation.
Just wanted to throw it out there.
Putting that out there.
Because I continue to hear that time is the issue.
Sorry, somebody over here was next. Ally.
Kind of piggybacking off of Nikki's question, one of the other things that has been raised in terms of a concern is, and maybe this is to Jeff or to Tara, I guess, is by not being on the teacher contract, they're losing that bargaining power. They don't have the ability to negotiate, if you will. They're losing that negotiation power. I know you had mentioned something around that, Jeff, at one of our meetings, but I don't specifically remember. So if you could specifically address that for me, thanks.
So what I get from Jackie is the same percentage that can be allocated to teachers. It's a finite amount of money. And so what we started doing when I came is I put out an all call to all of the groups that were not teachers. And we huddled up and we met and we went through each terms of employment. And we said, this is how much money that we have. This is our finite amount of money. And I didn't have the heart to keep groups of 15, so I had one group of 32. And my ask for them was, you don't represent yourself, you represent your colleagues. And if you can't do that, then maybe this isn't the right role for you. But all of them came in, we divided into subgroups, they made comments on their terms of employment. And then the ask was, if you don't like something, only say something if you have a way to improve it, right? Is there a way to do this better? And so we did that. And honestly, the most robust group was the classified staff, where they had the finite amount of money. If they wanted to do something that there was a cost to, we put that cost, we got with Jackie, and we went back and we said, if we want to do this, this will take away some of the salary increase, but it will add this value. So here's where we settled. They got the $1.50 an hour increase plus the step adjustment. And then they also, one of the things that they wanted to embed money in is because for whatever reason, we can't do annualized salary in North Dakota. So their 2 days over the holidays, Christmas Day and January 1st, they didn't have money those 2 days. So they wanted to invest some of that money to have 2 paid holidays. So that was drawn down, and that's where we landed with our certified staff who you could give them 10 times as much as that, but that was the start, and I feel like they were happy with that. Some of them wanted longevity adjustments, but the consensus was that only helps a few and not all. So whoever's part of these agreements, they'll get the invite to participate, and we'll have conversations, and we'll have the same finite amount of money, and then we'll determine like where at the end of the day is that money allocated.
Thank you. Oh,
So I'm hearing like pay but like what about, so obviously part of the teacher negotiation piece is things like prep time, things like their work day, things like that. Is that part of the things that they're able to then line item through on that job, it's not job description, we just
Yeah,
keep saying that
so-
word, but
so-
you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Okay.
all with the exception of hourly employees, admin and professional sports staff are exempt, right? Like most people, if you're a salaried employee and you happen to do a little bit extra here or there, you don't get paid for it. Now, if they teach summer school, if it's outside of their calendar, it's before their first day and after their last day, they get compensated for that. If they're doing something totally different from their job, like I'm going to coach somewhere or I'm going to teach something at another school, like we have people that do stuff during the day and then they'll go do something separate, they still get that same amount of money. All of those groups also get the benefit of anything that anything that parental leave bank, anything that is given solely to the teachers, they get the benefits of those same things.
okay. Greg, do you still have a question? Okay, so I'm going to go to Greg, and then I think we probably should move towards taking a vote sometime soonish, unless there are, new questions. I don't want to stifle anything, but we have been talking about this for quite a while. So we'll go to Greg, and then we'll just see if there's any other new topics that we need to still address here.
Yeah, on the general topic of, the ambiguity of, I think, the definition of primarily a classroom teacher and just acknowledging that there is some ambiguity and judgment there. I when I read through the three prongs, I wonder if some of our substitute teachers are going to be included in the negotiating unit. I know some of our substitutes, they're retired teachers, and I believe they would satisfy all three prongs, meaning they're employed by the district, they have a license, and let's make it an easy one, right? They come in as a third grade substitute, they would be employed as a classroom teacher.
Jeff might cut me off, but I would say the distinction would be, how are they being employed as a substitute teacher? Is it a long-term sub that we've hired on as an actual employee? Or are we talking about a temporary employee who's coming in to fill a single day vacancy? If they're a temporary employee coming in to fill a single day vacancy, I would argue they don't meet the first prong.
Who is employing them?
Contract employee. They're a contract.
Employed by who? Well, I'm intentionally.
I think you're getting into a nuance that a court would disagree with.
The court, the Supreme Court of the state of North Dakota, said they were being unambiguous when they laid out three prongs.
So, I would say I don't think that question is actually relevant to the bargaining unit that we are considering right now.
I think that's fair.
Okay, thanks.
But my point that I'm trying to demonstrate is that there is far more ambiguity here than I think we may be led to believe.
Okay. Okay. Any other? Okay. Go ahead.
I was just going to bring us back to the motion. So the motion on the table is that we want to just continue with what we did for the last two, so the current contract, and move forward with that. Kind of hearing, maybe I will make an amendment to that motion, which would be, can I do that?
If you want to make, you can, yes.
Okay, sorry, like you guys
can
were all
make an
looking
am-
at me like I was crazy. So I was just like,
So, yeah, you can make an amendment if you would like. You could move to make an amendment.
okay, I move to make an amendment to direct human capital for those that are wanting to come off. So those 1s, 2s, 3s, small groups that have already said, yes, we don't want to be on the unit, we can remove those. Would be the amendment. No? We can't do that?
An amendment would be to insert words or strike words
Okay.
and or both. So you'd have to direct me on where you were inserting,
You'd have to change
striking,
the
or both.
motion.
Okay, well, the end of the motion, okay, never mind. I just forget it then, I guess. I was
can I
trying to be
clarify?
helpful.
People cannot opt to be off the contract by definition, and that's the sticky part here.
No, it's the people that have already been said that they would be reclassified, right? So there's that entire list. There's big groups, but then there's like one line item, two, like Jeff was alluding to on his spreadsheet, that have already said, yes, we agree with the reclassification.
Then they'd be off already.
But is what we're saying is that they're already on the contract because they were included in the contract right now, correct?
We don't have an option to remove anybody because they want to be removed. That's how state law is
This
written.
motion would keep them on.
That's what I'm saying. This motion would keep them on even though they went off, and that we've agreed to it by reclassifying them already.
But we can't let them off.
Okay, Jason, were you going to add something?
Yeah, I was just gonna, Jeff and your team, thank you. You guys have done a ton of work in a very quick time trying to come to a resolution with this. So thank you. I kind of feel like we're really getting into the operational works of the school district, and that's not our role as a board. This is work that should be done by human capital at the direction of Tara, the attorney for the school district. And so I feel like we are getting way too involved in this, and it's gonna set precedents for other things, and that's not our role as a board.
I disagree. I think the North Dakota Century Code specifies that the negotiating units, one of them is the board. So we have to participate in this process.
Then you should look at what the purpose of the committee is. It doesn't say to define that group. It says to negotiate with that group.
Okay, Namal?
Yep, and your team, I just want to say thank you for bringing this forward. Well, it's already been brought forward, but for all the research that you have done, that mean a lot. And then I'm just wondering, can you be able, if we did provide you the time that you need and said, okay, we tabled this tonight, and just move forward as it is, would you be able to renegotiate or try to collaborate with FEA and ND, is it UND, ND United and so forth, and just to make sure that, all the nitty gritty, they're all tied up, and then later on we can come back to it?
I would really have my collaboration directly with the groups. And I feel like I'd get more value directly from those groups that are impacted. I feel like they know, no disrespect to anybody else, but they know their job descriptions much better than I do or anybody that's on the outside looking in. And so if this were tabled and moved to the next board meeting, those conversations then would happen directly with the people that are involved in the work. And then, get a stamp like, yes, I believe in this job description, defines the work I do. And then we would do the same crosswalk and come to the board. And I think it accomplishes what Ally said, right? I think it's not about people wanting to be on or off, but to say this is, at least everybody had the opportunity to say this is aligned with the work I do in FPS. We would still make a recommendation on what we think based on that updated job description. And then if the board so chose, they could go into these groups and determine whether or not individual groups are primarily teachers or not. That's just my thoughts.
Okay, so Melissa?
I just wanted to make sure,
You have to use your microphone if you're speaking, please.
I just wanted to make sure, is, I fully understand exactly what you're trying to present, or what you're trying to say here. My understanding, it seemed like there are a couple of groups did not want to oppose this, they don't want to collaborate. At this time, let's say, like I said, we want to be able to give you that time and process everything. Would they be willing to collaborate with you? Because some of them did oppose it already. Would they be willing to work with you after this? That's all I wanted to know, to be honest.
We're up against a deadline.
Yep.
March 3rd.
First. March 1st.
We would love to have more time, but we just don't.
Okay, I'm going to add, because I have just been directing traffic here and haven't said anything. I don't think there has been a day that has gone by in multiple weeks where I haven't had a phone call or an email or multiple on this particular topic. And I think to some of what is going on here, we're not gonna find a solution where every single person is happy. That's just not how the way this particular work happens. It's also extremely rare for me to find myself disagreeing with Dr. McKenna and Tara. And so these are not easy conversations by any means. But I do think we are up against a deadline. I'm also really uncomfortable with this district moving in a drastic direction than all the other districts. I am in favor of the motion, giving us more time, more collaboration, and more conversation with the teacher groups. If a group feels that they aren't a teacher group and that maybe they do fit on that professional support staff contract, I'm actually not opposed to that, but I want more conversation and collaboration before we get there. And I'm just going to acknowledge that with this North Dakota Supreme Court ruling, I think there is a decent chance that changes could be made to bargaining units throughout the state. Like, I'm not going to deny that, but I'm not comfortable moving in that direction right now with the timeline that we have in front of us. Nikki?
I would really like to move to table this. Anne Marie, is there a way that I can make that motion? How would I amend this?
You would move to postpone the motion to a time certain time that you would note in your postponement.
Okay, I'm going to give this a shot. I'd like to move that we postpone this until our next board meeting, which is February
25th.
25th?
25th.
24th.
Oh, 24th?
24th.
24th.
To February 24th, so that Human Capital has more time to meet with employee groups, and we have more time to set this out.
Okay, so there's a motion to postpone this to move it to the 24th. We would need a second.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion from Nikki and a second from Nimal. So we're going to take a vote, but it's only on the decision to move it to the 24th.
Discussion can happen first.
Discussion can happen,
But it is limited.
but it is
to
limited to the motion,
It's limited to the time frame
Sorry,
you're
yeah,
talking about
to
in the
the-
postponement.
to the postponement. Yes, Robin?
I will not be supporting this amendment.
I'm very concerned. There's a reason that the negotiations committee put this on today's agenda. Other discussion? Okay, can we vote on this motion, please? Anne Marie?
The motion on the floor is to postpone the motion until the next board meeting, which is February 24th. Clark?
No.
Day? Yes. Gullickson?
Yes.
Jason Nelson?
Yes.
Kristen Nelson?
No.
Robin Nelson?
No.
Olenberger?
No.
Berkland?
No.
Christensen Meinier?
No. That motion fails
3-6.
thank you. 3-6. Okay, and at this point in time, I think we should, so now we're back on our original motion to keep the same bargaining unit from the past contract to this one, and I think we should move into voting on this one. Okay? All right, Anne Marie.
And everybody knows what we're voting on?
Sorry, yeah, does everybody know
Can
we're
we,
voting
can
on?
we just restate the,
Yeah.
the motion just?
Yep,
just 'cause
absolutely.
It's been a while.
That the job groupings or positions recognized as part of the negotiating unit for the 23-25 contract remain the same as the 25-27 contract negotiations.
Yes, thank you. We are ready to vote.
Very good. Day?
Yes.
Gullickson?
No.
Jason Nelson?
No.
Kristen Nelson?
Yes.
Robin Nelson?
Yes.
Olenberger,
Yes.
Berglund,
Yes.
Clark,
Yes.
Christensen Meinier? Yes. That motion passes 7-2. Okay, thank you very much. Let's move on to the superintendent search update. Anne Marie, do you want to give us an update on that?
Sure, I'd love to.
Thank you.
The position closed to application on February 2nd. The board has received 19 applications for that position. Those applications come to you from Rhode Island, Iowa, Minnesota, California, Arizona, North Dakota, and Florida. The board, as you know, is set to meet on Thursday. I look forward to seeing you at 8:30 a.m. upstairs in the executive conference room, where you will meet with Ray and Associates to review those applications and narrow those down to the individuals you'd like to offer for first round interviews. Per state law, that will be done in an executive session, as applications are confidential until the time that finalists are named. So you guys are set to do that on Thursday. If you guys have any questions about that, happy to answer those, because right now you guys are set to interview those first rounds next Thursday, the 20th. Allie.
How many do we, like, what's the number that we look to get down to? Or do we decide that on Thursday?
You'll decide that on Thursday. Yeah,
Okay.
together.
Okay, any other questions about the search? Okay, great.
I
Oh,
had
sorry,
one-
Greg.
One quick one. I know that we all, or we should have all signed a confidentiality agreement. When we select people to be interviewed, is that, I assume at some point there's less secrecy about some stuff, right? Because they're going to be part of like interviews at some point. An open meeting has to happen, right?
Great question. So only candidate information becomes public for the finalists. So the finalists that you would name, so that last week in February where you're set to interview those finalists, those folks and their application materials become public knowledge and public record. So at no point do all of the candidates become public record.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes, because the first round interviews will be conducted in executive session. Yep.
Yeah, so that was I've heard her say that a few times, and so I've got that stuck in my head that even when we have like those semifinalists, those are protected and confidential also. So it's only our final candidates that are publicly known. Other questions about the search? Okay, so we are now going to go on to our committee liaison and correspondence reports. Let's start with, I'm going to go with Robin and go around the room this way.
I think I've spoken enough.
You have shared a lot tonight, yes. Thank you. Greg?
Planning still, honestly, mostly just stuff about the long-range facilities plan. And we have I think a really solid timeline now for exactly when we're going to be starting to make some of the decisions. I met with Dr. Gandhi and some other administration about really ironing out the digital version of our long-range facilities plan simulation. You'll have it for at least a month before any real decisions start to be formulated through planning and the full board. Look forward to that pretty early in March, I think. I think I can actually promise that now. And then the only other probably thing worth mentioning was that I got to participate in a meeting with some consultants and community members and board member Jason Nelson as well, and some admin about some design standards for future buildings that are going to be kind of part of the long-range facilities plan going forward.
Thank you, Greg. Melissa?
Yeah, negotiations met on February 3rd. We do have I promise it will be short, but we have a new strategy that I'd like to get blessing from the board to go into executive session this evening. So that will be coming. And then at the end of last week, Thursday, Friday, the North Dakota School Board Associations had their annual negotiations conference. Nikki and I went. It was really great. I thought a lot of great content and nice to meet people across the state. So that's about all I've been doing.
Okay, Namal, do you want to give your update really
Yes,
quickly?
I
and then
do.
you're gonna
I
head
have a
out?
kid that is sick at home, so I need to go. So I attended planning committees, and then that was on February 6th, and then the 7th governmental affair. And thank you.
Thanks. Kristen?
Yeah, I attended a Fargo Youth Initiative meeting last week, and we talked. They had a lot of questions about the legislative process, how they, as young people who cannot vote yet, how they can be involved in the legislative process. These are very smart, intelligent kids who ask several great questions. They also had lots of questions about attendance policies and procedures for their friends and students who also attend their schools. They're concerned about those things. So those are some of the discussions that we had that night. I met with the principal at Lewis and Clark, and I met with Dr. Lean at the Explorers Academy today. I also met with several teachers, as I'm sure many of us have done in these last couple weeks.
Okay, thank you, Kristen. Allie?
All right. Well, the exciting thing is that I got to attend calendar committee for the first time. That was super awesome. We reviewed the data. Bob does. I know Bob is not here, but maybe he'll listen to the recording. But just shout out to Bob for not only his organization and just his overall leadership of that committee. He does a phenomenal job. And so really looking into the data and kind of just some of the different trends that we noted in terms of the responses. Overwhelmingly, people want to start a little bit earlier in August and they want to be done before June 1st. And for the first time in a number of years, resounding across the board from students, staff, and parents, a no week-long spring break. So looking forward to 2026. Having a few long weekends and no week-long.
Just to clarify, did you say no week-long spring break?
No week-long spring break. Like 78% of people say.
You might start getting some
no.
emails now that you said that into a microphone.
Bring it on.
Saying.
I'm telling you what we went by the survey data. And so again, if there's feedback on the calendar, please send it my way. I'm happy to have conversations about it and bring all the opinions together. The other thing I've been up to is I've having a lot of great conversations with our educators across the district, and I just wanted to say a huge thank you. I know it's not easy to reach out and to share concerns, especially in vulnerable states when you have fears or concerns, and I just, again, thank you to every single one of them that reached out, shared their concerns with the board. I very much appreciated hearing from each and every one of you. And the last thing is I did a luncheon last week. Robin was in attendance and showed her support for that, but it was at the URC luncheon and they wanted to know all things school board and have good conversations. And so I addressed them over their politics in a plate luncheon last week, and that is it. So
Great, thank you, Allie. Jason?
Met with FEA President Laura Christensen. Time got away from us. We talked for about an hour and a half on many different topics. So it was a good meeting, and then also attended the standardization meeting for facilities that James hosted. So that's it.
Thank you. Nikki?
As you've heard, I attended negotiations committee. I attended the negotiations conference, and CEA will meet tomorrow.
All right, thank you very much. And for
CEA will meet Friday, right?
Okay.
Friday, okay.
Did you just send everyone into a... Yeah. Well, along those lines, I was thinking, we had GAC a few weeks ago, but no, it was yesterday, right? We had GAC yesterday. So, but for my... No, sorry, not GAC. Governance, thank you. Governance. Sorry, GAC was Friday, governance, sorry. Yes, governance. We had governance. Yesterday, we reviewed the superintendent evaluation information that board members shared, and we discussed naming a room at Longfellow after a former teacher, and those items will be coming to the full board in the future. I also want to echo what Dr. Gandhi said, that I know this has been a really heavy week for a lot of our faculty and staff, and I just want to acknowledge that the work that we do here is incredibly important, and I know it's even harder when we have heavy things like that on them. So my heart goes out to all of you impacted by that. And then I believe you did say we're going to use executive session tonight?
Yes.
Okay, we get to hang out for longer. But I believe Jason and Greg are dismissed. Is that correct?
Yeah, I have a conflict, so
Okay.
I will step out.
Okay. Oh, I see. Bye. Okay. Okay, but we're not, after that, all we're doing is adjourning, correct? Yes. Okay. So if you want to stay until we come back and just adjourn, you can, but you're certainly welcome to. Yeah.
We need
Yep,
a
you need to
motion
leave.
to go into
And you
executive
don't have to
session though
come back.
first. We need a motion to go into executive
Yeah,
session first,
sorry.
please.
We need a motion.
Okay, don't have my word.
I
Go
will
ahead.
make a motion
Okay.
for the purpose of negotiation strategy as permitted under NDCC 44-04-19.1 and 15.1-16-22.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion from Ally and a second from Robin. Any discussion? Oh, yeah. Okay, roll call, please.
I do have to do roll call by Attorney General's opinion. So, Gullickson,
Yes.
Kristen Nelson,
Yes.
Robin Nelson,
Yes.
Olenberger,
Yes.
Berkland,
Yes.
Day is absent, Christensen, Meinier.
Yes. Motion passes 6-0. Okay, so we gotta get set up. Okay, thank you. We're out of executive session. It is now 7:39 PM. Oh, sorry, I have to affirm our next regular meeting date. I'll see you all on February 24th. That is a Monday. And then it is now 7:39 PM and this meeting is adjourned.